In a country like Cameroon, agriculture is of central importance. And with the current situation in Ukraine, with the limited or near zero access to the resources necessary for basic things like bread, you realize that flour needs to be manufactured locally at industrial scale, which is not yet the case. Having access, you control industrialization of the agricultural products that will lead to a better independence, so to speak, of imported products when it comes to uh, basic food items, things that everybody consumes and that is expected to be at a very low cost, but that happens to become suddenly expensive when resources that we don't control are suddenly limited by factors that are out of our control, unfortunately. So it becomes easier to monitor crop growth and health, to analyze, the fields and detect whatever anomalies, optimize yields, and of course, monitor deforestation, because it is not an easy thing to do, to monitor deforestation. It is somewhat risky if you're going with boots on the ground. But if you have access to satellite data, of course, you can do that. Now, I'm not saying that with all the satellites currently in orbit, it's not possible to get some of this data, but the better resolution information will have to be bought, and you would hope to always have the possibility to buy this information. In a country like Cameroon, if you are importing technology, you are paying a small tax for that. So it costs money to import technology. So having a local supplier of this technology will cost less. Now, if the local supplier is also buying from someone else to resell, then the charges of this technology are on the local supplier. However, if the local supplier owns, even if only partially, the infrastructure from which the data comes, then suddenly it becomes more affordable to access this satellite data that will help the agricultural sector. This applies for all the sectors that I'm mentioning, of course. If we look at civil administration, how do we monitor and manage our natural resources? It's not an easy thing to do if you don't use satellite data. How do you monitor infrastructure and urban development? Infrastructure development and urban development are things that take time. Yes, one can imagine flying drones every now and again, or helicopters, but once you start stretching this over a few years, it starts being a bit heavy on the pocket. However, with one satellite, with actually one satellite, not the constellation, one, with the right resolution, this can be achieved, right? This can be achieved. If it is a locally owned satellite, then even better. How do we manage our disasters in a fast and efficient manner? Because this, we have heard, and I stay within the Cameroon context, but other countries face these things. Landslides are not a thing of Cameroon only, right? Floods are not. We see these things. But unfortunately, we cannot respond fast enough, right? And saving lives is really a matter of being able to respond fast enough, saving lives and property. How do we monitor key popular events and celebrations? During the AFCON in Cameroon, we had a very tragic event at the Olembe Stadium in Yaoundé, where there was a stampede. There was a stampede that cost lives, unfortunately. Now, if there were a way to monitor continuously what I call popular events and celebrations, where it's important to be able to study crowd dynamics and over time design ways to protect these same crowds. I suppose that we might have, even if this played only one small role in mitigating such catastrophe, definitely satellite data would have contributed, not while it was happening, but before, over time, to build the best strategies in order to prevent this. Because you have to understand that it is a contextual thing to do. How one would handle a crowd in Paris is not how one would handle a crowd in Yaoundé or Douala, right? There are local realities that may not be obvious on a case by case, but over a few cases, they start emerging, right? And these things can be effectively studied if you have satellite data, which is easily accessible. How about defense? I think this is the most obvious one, right? How do you guarantee territorial situational awareness? What do I mean? It's who is who is at my door, right? As a country, who is at my and goes out? This has to do with the security of the country. Infrastructure change detection is important because this is one factor that allows certain countries to know whether certain kind of weaponry is being developed in another country. And I don't want to cite specific countries, but if you know how to analyze the change in infrastructure in different places, you can tell a lot about what's going on, and this can help in securing national security if we can do this for the infrastructure change detection within the borders of Cameroon. Now, how about borders and maritime domain surveillance? In our waters, who is in our waters? Who occupies these spaces? Are they there legally? What activities are they carrying out? Are these activities being carried out legally? Satellite data can hugely contribute. In fact, this is one of the fields where satellite data is very is essential. It is indeed complementary to other technologies, but it allows to achieve a lot. Of course, it's more or less obvious that this contributes to terrorism activity monitoring. In a country like Cameroon, it's no news anymore that there's a lot of Boko Haram related activities up north with the around the borders of with Nigeria, and there's a lot of activity also with the entire campaign against terrorism in Africa in a big scale, with the borders along the borders with Chad. So it's not easy, around those areas, and definitely satellite data can contribute to monitor such activities. Also, it's important to understand that while I'm talking about Cameroon, this is something that is affecting borders. And should Cameroon have its own satellite, it is, how can I say, it is with more sovereignty that it will access this data, and depending on its relationship with its neighbors, make this data available to neighboring countries, and perhaps also assist some neighboring countries to protect their own borders in a collective effort as the fight against terrorism. Now, how about education and research? first, it's important. It's important to have a sense of African pride because of such infrastructure. It is a point not to be neglected. In fact, it is such central point that it by itself can boost the level of innovation that would result from having an active satellite in orbit. If you notice, the more advanced nations, when it comes to space science and technology, access to space, autonomous access to space, autonomous and sovereign access to space is a point of pride. It's a huge point of pride. Every country that has either privately owned or state owned satellites or space infrastructure of any sort use that as a point of pride. It's extremely important. It's extremely important for it to have something that will make the young people to dream. Very important. And this can highly contribute in a country like Cameroon, where a lot of African pride altogether, not only national pride, is attached to sports and arts. You know, technology more in general, and in particular satellite technology that is homegrown or at least home